Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests included Dan Nelkin, the author of a self-help guide for copywriters, Fred Seibert of Fred Films, and Cynthia Huang of D Travel. I am forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we are always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who craft entertainment-quality animation and illustration that grabs attention and gets results. With clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and sci-fi, we know how to speak to pop culture-savvy audiences. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, so with us today, we have Jack Siler. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, man, really glad to have you. So Jack is a creative director and design strategist with over 15 years of experience building global brand identity systems and leading cross-functional teams across tech, gaming, and consumer brands. He's passionate about the intersection of design, art, and business, where creativity meets strategy and great design is great problem solving. Unlike many of his peers, Jack started in marketing, transitioned to creative operations, and ultimately became a creative director and designer, giving him a unique perspective on both strategy and execution. Oh, and he's also a comic book and sci-fi nerd. All right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Kindred spirit, just off of listening to your intro there. Got a lot in common. As you know, we've chatted a little bit before. So before we get into the subject today, I would like the audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in the industry and what project you're most proud of so far.
Oh, man. I have been in the design industry 96. That's really when I transitioned from a marketing background as an analyst into something that was more about design and creativity. That it was, it feels longer, but it isn't. Yeah. As far as, I was in part of creative operations for about 5 or 6 years, joined Sony in 2000, right before the launch of PlayStation 2. So the risk of aging myself, I have just done that successfully.
Yeah, no worries.
But, it was a hell of an experience. It was a hell of a ride to be able to be part of that as PlayStation was really starting to explode into the market. And it managed to get me in touch with everything from packaging design, logo, graphic identities, and how those can cascade through various touch points. Brochures, I'm a sucker for a press check. I don't know why, but I really am. And I really got to work heavily in that side of the business back in the early 2000s when print still mattered.
Yeah.
But
what's a printer?
Oh my God, I know, right? The best part is when you got somebody who gives you a story about a press check that they've been on, and I'm like, yep, I get it. My kids will have no idea what that means, but I understand every word you're saying.
So is that when I press check on the screen?
Yes, that's exactly right. And the smudges on there, yeah, that's a feature, not a bug. But, it's the Sony experience really gave me a chance to expand out from a brand standpoint, from a packaging standpoint, POP, in-store, online, digital. How do we talk about entertainment, about the game and the story, and how do we talk about the brand and how that ties in? And those lessons I've been able to carry forward into all sorts of things. So it's been a lot of fun. As far as
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just think that was probably an exciting time because, print was still so relevant and still like you needed to have all these great things and do press checks and make sure you didn't send out a billion copies of whatever with a typo on a page, like just lighting money on fire, right? It's not like a website launch, like, oh, we can change that. No big deal. Boop, boop, boop. One line of code edit and we're good. So that but also digital was still like, blowing up and very important then. It was almost like there was two really big important things at the time. Now it's like, print has sort of fallen to the wayside, but packaging's still important. And there's still a lot of, but you don't even have manuals in games anymore. It's just like, it's built into the game now, which is crazy. But anyways, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and that's the fun part of seeing that transition. I mean, I still have, in fact, the Getaway. Loved this game, and I use this as part of my interview process. Because there is an error on every single page. It is the same error on every single page, and we printed 15,000 of these.
Now, did you guys use them, or did they get scrapped and reprinted?
They actually, the one of the guys at the end of the line actually was flipping through and was like, wow, this is really cool. Loved the art, and then noticed the error. And so we got a call on that. It was meant some rush charges, rush fee, get it done, redo it. But again, at that time, there were budgets that were ungodly. I mean, when we were working with the PlayStation 2, we were practically printing money.
Yeah.
So it was not as catastrophic as it could have been, but I still use that as a test for my new employees, find the error.
Oh.
And, the fun part is, I've had some people just pick it up like that. A friend of mine picked it up and he's like, wow, that's just incompetent. And then I told him after I hired him that was my screw up. He's like, oh. But, I mean, it's the fun part about all of this is, this industry that we're in, graphics and design and communications, it's always evolving. It's always changing. The fact that, print is going away. I used to do press checks where we had, we would do a 36 to a 44 page catalog, and we'd print 1.5 million of those. Yeah. You don't do that anymore.
No. What are you going to do with 1.5 million of anything in print?
Yeah, right. But I mean, and that's the fun part is, this industry, as frustrating and as maddening and as crazy as it can be, it's always changing. It's always moving into a different direction. And how we as designers, as we in the creative space adapt to that, that's going to be interesting. I mean, it's still interesting. I mean, AI is the current thing that's landing in everybody's lap with, oh God, what do we do now?
Yeah. Right.
Some people are embracing it. Some people are, literally saying, I think I need to get out of the design business.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I ran a thing on the new Chat GPT's AI, the new image creation thing. Like, graphic design used to be horrible and text was illegible and it's fixed it. Like, it's 90. I do have some kerning and lighting issues and some like alignment with apostrophes and quotate. Like, we're talking about 95% of the way there, and I was just like, holy shit, I don't know. Like, I don't know where that goes, but yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And what's going to be fun about all of that is because we're at the start of it, we're all figuring it out. Right. I mean, the folks that will tell you right now that they're experts, that just means they know a little bit more than the rest of us. That doesn't mean that they know everything. It's not like, my daughter is going to UC San Diego in cellular and molecular biology. Just graduated, and she can tell you more about stem cells than you or I could do in a day's worth of research, which is a good thing because, science.
That's what we want.
But that's the kind of expertise that you're hoping for. And from a design standpoint, we'll get there. I promise you, we'll figure it out. But once we do, it'll change again.
Yeah. 100%, dude. I've seen it, I've been in the industry now. I graduated college in 2007, 8, something. Yeah, 8, I think. So, a little younger than you, but I mean, it's changed dramatically just since I've been here, right? Like, it's, I've been at it 20 years and it's like every decade's totally different. I think, as AI evolves, we'll see where that goes. That ends up being some part of every conversation on this podcast. But I think there's a big play in the metaverse here where like that becomes the new place where it's like, all right, well, we need to start advertising here and doing these things. And I don't know if that's an AR metaverse that's like tied to like, things like that, or if it's, my kid, spends too much of his free time in VR with his friends in these metaverse worlds doing these different things, right? Not Zuckerberg's metaverses that he was trying to like, oh, I'm going to rebrand and make meta and then we're going to be cool. And it's like, yeah, that didn't really work. Like, they play all kinds of shit. They don't do anything with Horizon Worlds. Like, none of the kids want to do anything with it. Anyways.
And that's the fun part. I mean, and I think, where does the money go? That'll determine how we communicate and how we you reach into these spaces.
Yeah.
Where are our kids going?
The money goes where the attention goes, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that's sort of like how all that, and sometimes you can steer it a little bit if you're pumping up money in the direction, but usually it's just like like you said, it's like the kids are kind of determining the future at this point. Like, where do they want to be? What do they want to do? Where are they hanging out? They'll continue doing that in their 20s, and then in their 30s when they actually have buying power. And then it's like all of a sudden, like, well, we need to really be advertising here, So yeah. Yeah. So look, today I wanted to kind of get more into the do's and don'ts of giving creative feedback, because just from your extensive experience, I just thought that would be a good subject matter for us. And then like I said, we can riff around that and do whatever. It would be fun. So what are some top things that you've seen there, that like, what are the top things to do when giving creative feedback? And then we'll go on the don'ts. How about that?
No, that sounds great. First, have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish. And ideally, it's more than just make more money or increase sales. That's lovely, but you need to get a little more granular than that.
Yeah.
So that's having a good idea about what it is that you're trying to solve. Are you selling something? Are you trying to get someone to go from point A to point B? Are you trying to get to change behavior? If you can get to that level before you start talking to your design folks, that helps. Because that'll give them something to latch onto. If you've got a story, I mean, in gaming, it's easy. You have a story. It's built into the game. But when you're talking about something like flash drives, currently I work for Lexar, and we're selling everything from flash drives to micro SDs to portable SSD drives. And, at the end of the day, all of those things have to do with memory. But why someone goes in to buy and purchase a particular drive for a particular purpose, now you've got yourself a story you can start to dig into.
Yeah.
With that story, now you can start to engage with your creative teams to say, here's the product, here's what it does. This is the type of person that's going to use this or buy this. And now your creative team is thinking, okay, I can build a story around this person. I can see their life. I've got an idea of where it goes. If you can do that, that makes everything work.
Okay.
I think the other thing that you need to do as a business professional, engaging with a creative team, whether it's in-house, whether it's, someone down the street, or, a larger agency or a small agency, also come into that conversation with what not to do.
Right.
That's in my experience, knowing that up front is actually more useful than you telling me what needs to be done. Because if I know what to avoid, whether it's because it looks exactly like a client or a competitor of ours, or because we have a different brand, a sub-brand within our stable that is doing something similar, or we tried this before and the feedback was absolutely horrible and we should never go near that again. Like, that's all good information to have, because it allows me and my team to focus in real tight with what this thing is that we're trying to solve.
100%. Yeah, Ross says something similar to this all the time. Ross is our creative director at Epic Made, but he really needs to know the box. What is the box we're working in? Like, we need these things and we don't want these things, right? And that's, the space in between is where you gotta make the thing. So, and that could be a logo, that could be a video, that could be a whole campaign, that could be copywriting, it could be a web, it could be anything, whatever it is, right? So, yeah, I love that. Have you felt that? So, in those communications and situations, like, are there particular methodologies that you use to approach, or ways that you've seen not work? Like, people are like, oh, I got one. It's like, we have a client. They don't like this concept, and they go, well, we don't like it, right? Well, we did a bunch of research. We interviewed you for an hour and a half. We didn't just slap some pixels on the paper. Why don't you like it, right? Like, let's get into what about it is sending you in that direction, like helping articulate those things, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it really does that. The who, what, when, where, how, and why. Those are your tools.
okay.
Forget everything that you know when it comes to graphics, color, all of that.
Right.
Those are technical skills and they can be learned. But if you can focus on the who, what, when, where, how, and why, and use that as an investigative tool to probe into those questions to the folks that are like, just not feeling it. Like, Cool. Tell me more about that. In some respects, you're going to have to be an investigative journalist here, digging into, there's a story here. What's missing? Are we missing certain facts? Did we not have enough? Do we have too little? What else could we add, or do we need to take away? And that is a really good foundation for me to kind of dig into it. Sometimes you have to come in with, here's what's been done before, and this is why we avoided those directions. I've worked with some folks that, I had a boss that was adamant. You don't come in and show alternatives, you show the solution.
Ooh.
And I don't subscribe to that. I have a great deal of angst when it comes to that approach, because I firmly believe I'm not the smartest guy in the room.
Sure.
I also firmly believe all of us together are smarter than any one of us alone.
Yeah.
So if I come in with the one solution, there's an arrogance there that I don't want to subscribe to.
Yeah.
and I realize that maybe a strong word. I'm using it intentionally because it's in part to keep myself in check.
Sure.
But, you're engaging with the client should be a partnership. It should be, hey, look, we're going to build this together. And
Right.
if I come in with the one answer, we're not building it together. I'm not building something for you. I'm building it for me, and you're going to pay me money for it. And I don't like that thinking.
Yeah, I don't think that gets you the best result. That said, I think there's probably some clients that like that. It is because I'm not creative. I do spreadsheets, but you're the expert. You do it. I'll take whatever. There are scenarios where that probably makes sense. But like you said, at the end of the day, like, unless you're deeply niched into just that specific industry and like all the competition, like there's some variables maybe, but like at the end of the day, you're gonna get something better when everyone brings their expertise and perspective to the table. Like that's exactly how I feel. I've seen branding companies that deliver one logo. This is, you hired us. It's $100,000. You get a logo, and it's like,
Yes.
Is that process really, really going to work? Is that really like the one logo? It's sort of like someone telling you that their religion is the only truth in the whole world. Like, I have a hard time taking those people serious as well. It's like, oh, you stumbled upon the perfect thing that no one else has, and like, just no. Yeah, I didn't even get. It's not to offend anybody.
I could do that same tangent. It's like, the world is made up of stories, and the amount of duplication, with variations that we see from one culture to the other is amazing. So it does make you wonder, maybe there's more than one thing going on out. But the other reason I would caution anyone from coming in with the one answer, and I've seen agencies do this before. I've had to work with them, and it ends up inevitably leading to the client saying, okay, why? Prove it. Show me how you got there. That can be a very long process. And if anything, you put your client in a position where they are now saying, I want to trust you, but now you've got to work twice as hard to make me trust you.
Right.
And if you come in with, there's more than one way to solve this problem. We have an opinion about what we think the right one is based on everything that we've learned, what our experience as designers, as creatives, plus our experience with digging into your field, your industry, your products, whatever those variables may be. But at the end of the day, we came in with these 5. And I've worked with a couple agencies that they will come in and they will show you what they recommend. And then they will show you all of the work that they've done. And I love that. Personally, I love that. To me, that's just like Christmas. Round 1, round 2, I love those. That's where all the juice is. But what's neat about having that kind of approach of, here's the thinking that got us here, is sometimes that sparks something different in the client, where they're like, you know what? I like this aspect from comp 7, and I like this aspect from comp 3. They're very different, but both of them have what I need to solve multiple problems here. And now you've managed to take that wide world of what's possible and narrow it to something that's even closer, where you get a solution for your client that much faster without so much the fight.
Yeah. It just seems like a better process for sure.
I prefer it. The going in with one answer, I like I said, it doesn't work with how I think and how I look at the world. I firmly believe that you get what you want, I get what I want. That's great. But if we can both get closer to something that works for both of us, then that's a long-term solution.
Like that's like the core of like real good capitalism, right? Like it's a win-win, right? Like everybody, they feel like they got the value out of this that makes, the ROI worthwhile. And you feel like your time was invested properly. And you got paid enough to continue to live your life and build your thing. And it's like, I feel like that gets lost somewhere these days. That it's like, let me take as much advantage of somebody. And I don't see that very often in creatives, and especially not agency, like a really creative driven agency owners. But like you'll see some agency owners that are just out there to pillage, and people, and in the business world too, just at large, like it's just like, God, people, like it's not just about the money. Like, yeah, make money. Make a lot of money, but do it in a way that's good, like feels good, that like people are all getting value along the process, right? So yeah,
I'm with you. I appreciate. Look, at the end of the day, I've had some of creatives, some agencies, some vendors that I've worked with that have said, "Tell me what the number needs to be," and my response to that every time is, "You tell me what it needs to be, so that you don't go out of business."
yeah,
Because if you come in and you cut your throat to get my business, that's great. My short-term problem is fixed. My budget's looking really healthy right now. But 6 months from now, when I need you, you're not going to be available. Or the other part that kills me is when you get the client or the agency saying, "Yeah, the number that we gave you, that was the special deal so that you could see how good we are. And this now is the real number." And I'm like, all right, I don't work with you.
yeah,
Honest to God, at that point, that's the end of our relationship, because I can't trust you to tell me what it is that you need to be able to stay in business. If I can't afford whatever that may be, then we're going to have to shake hands and move on. But if you're cutting your throat all the time as a way to get more business, that's not sustainable. I mean, unless this is a hobby and you don't care, well, that's great. But I haven't met too many folks that do this as a hobby.
no, it's way too stressful to be a hobby.
Right?
I have an art hobby. I live stream on Wednesday nights, and I just draw in Photoshop and drink a beer and talk to my friends. That's an art hobby, and sometimes people buy prints, I make like $4 on the print on demand stuff. It's great.
Yep. But for your soul, that's what you're doing. I mean, I've got I do something similar on the side. So
yeah. So that totally makes sense. So what are some of the like major slip ups that you've seen in terms of people communicating around these processes? Like, we talked about one earlier with I don't like it, but like, is there anything else that should be on the radar of everyone?
I'll know it when I see it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you familiar with that?
Exhaustingly familiar.
You know what? Those folks can be absolute joys to work with, because when they see it and it ignites something in them. That's amazing when you're there. But that depends on so much luck.
If you ever get there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of and I've worked with some folks like that, where I learned to become more of that investigative journalist. Tell me more about, and sometimes it's not even where you're talking about the comp itself, but you're talking about the process or the product or the vibe. And once that conversation goes there, next thing you know, you're like, oh, I can see why this isn't working for you. We've got the wrong vibe. We've got the wrong feeling that we're putting out.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back and kind of read between the lines of the brief. The one thing that I would say also is a watch out is when you get the brief and it says, we're looking for our target audience is anyone from the age of 18 to 67. And, as they go through the list, you're like, so basically people with heartbeats. Got it. Now, what are the odds that we're going to be able to get all of those folks? And again, you have to start doing that investigative, dig deeper. If you could only get, I love the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business comes from 20% of that population. Tell me more about the 20%. If we can get the rest of them, we will, but let's focus on that.
That's so true.
It's scary. The other thing that is a watch out, and I think I've heard you talking about this in one of your earlier podcasts, is when you have all of the features being put in there.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and I've got a lot of time in tech and a lot of time in industries that have a technical aspect to it. And your engineers are so proud of the work that they have done.
Yeah.
Everything that they have done solves a problem. And that's fantastic. But you can't put everything on the front of the box.
Nope.
You can't put everything on your web page. Well, web page you probably could, but that initial banner, that top line, you can't.
Yeah. It has to flow as they want to dig deeper, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So then that gets back to that whole idea of storytelling. It's like, I want to tell all your features, and we will. There are places to do that, but it needs to be done in the right order. You don't want to read a book out of order. You don't want to see a movie when it's sliced up out of order. When you do, it's usually because there's a path that your director is making you take.
Right.
And if it's done well, like say Memento, then it's amazing. But when it's not done well, you're just sitting there saying, what am I doing wasting my time here? And you've already lost your audience.
Yep.
So tell your story. Think about how you present the work as a story. And it'll make it a lot easier for you to see who you're talking to, what's important to them. And yeah, we've got all these features, but these are the three that you care about the most. Everything else is a bonus at that point.
I love that. Go ahead.
No, and once your client starts to see that, and I've worked in-house for the majority of my career, which it allows me to have the space to build those relationships internally.
Sure.
Where they start to see how this approach comes together. And then, I've worked with some PMs that were absolute joys, that they were able to see their product as the story. And once they started doing that, the briefs that I got were so much tighter.
Ooh.
And once that started happening, we were able to move so much faster through the process. We were able to talk to the decision makers because, every PM, every boss has got a boss that needs to know, why did you do X?
Yes.
And that story makes it easier for them to relay it back. It's more than just with pops on the shelf, which is feedback I hate. It's got to pop. I'm like, sure, let's just put little explosives on everything that we make, and it'll be good.
That's the best. When you say this, I've heard, this is sound advice, obviously. And I heard it said in a way that really resonated with me. The first time I heard it was just that, like, sell the destination, not the airplane, not the travel, not the whole whatever you're going to do to get them there. Like, when you're selling a thing, it's like, hey, you're going to have peace of mind because your data is secure or whatever, right? Like, you don't need to know about all the encryption levels and all the different this, that, whatever, and it's been tested 35 ways and this, that. Like, no one gives a shit all that. You just want to know I put the thing there and nobody can get it but me unless I give them access, right? Like, so it's, it's telling the stories around that is huge. It's all about storytelling. Human culture has grown and evolved around storytelling. And that is exactly what we're dialing and tapping into here. And, there's no such thing as content that's too long or too this or too that. It's really just not engaging enough, right? Like, you can have a 30-minute commercial. If it was gripping entertainment, people would watch it if they had 30 minutes to spend, right? Like, it's all relative. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, I'm going to date myself here. BMW had a series of shorts with a character they created called The Driver. And it had this whole kind of, Michael Mann kind of vibe to it, where are we meeting the transporter with that kind of action adventure story with a film noir, with gritty on the street? This is what we're doing. And your guy was sharp dressed, no tie, the driver. And they were a series of stories in that. It's like, cool. I'm watching a long commercial here for BMW, but I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
And, that's the hardest thing for us to tap into. And, I think as marketers, as business people within the creative space, just walking in with a story is great. You need that. The other half of that equation to really make it work is, how does that fit with your brand's story?
Right.
If your brand does not fit with what you're doing, well, okay, maybe you should be questioning, is this the product that you need to be releasing? But if you don't have a choice in that, okay, so be it, we move on. But you want your brand and your product and all of those stories to line up.
Share the same values and when those things all line up, that's when the synergy happens. That's when you have really mind-blowingly successful ads and campaigns. We created an ad for this tabletop gaming company, right? And they make little minis for your D&D. Shout out to Eldritch Foundry. So you can go on their little website and program, and they have an online builder, and you build out your thing, and you can either download the STL or they'll print it out and ship it to you, right? But we're like, how are we going to make an ad for these guys that's good, that I want to watch? We could sell the features, like, oh, look, you can build the thing and all these little WYSIWYGs and that's the default thing, right? That's not going to sell. No one's going to get excited about that. So what we did, people use these for their D&D campaigns, and we're all nerds, right? So we're like, what if we created a story that was just dropped you right in there, and we had the big bad guy going, ha ha, you'll never defeat me, and he's coming out of this thing, we just dropped you right into the middle of an epic D&D story, right? And then all of a sudden we break the fourth wall, we change the animation style. It's like, whoa, where'd you get those cool minis? And then we start talking about the thing, and then infusing all these features and ways that this is exciting. But before you knew you were watching an ad, you were already excited and bought into this thing because it looked really cool and you could relate to it. And we were targeting the specific audience, right? So you can make that great message, but you got to deliver it to the right people at the right time as well. Maybe they got a 10% click-through rating. People watched the whole video. It was nuts, right? So but that's what happens when you get the message right and you get the story right and you put it in the right place, and it aligns with the values of what you're trying to do, and all of it comes together. And then it's like printing money with your ad dollars, right? So that's what you want, right? That's the victory. And so I found myself talking about that one all the time because it worked so well, and I was just so proud of the strategy behind it. And then when we actually did our thing with Epic Made, we don't ever slouch on the visuals. So the story and the strategy and all of it came together and just really crushed it. So
yeah, that's where you feel like, you know what? Even if you throw me off a cliff right now, that's okay. I can build wings. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, totally. I do want to, you keep saying something that I want to bring up that I don't think we've talked about on the podcast yet, but that's, you keep saying, oh, I'm aging myself. There's something weird in our industry where we don't, and maybe it's a whole cultural thing that somehow the older you are, the less innovative you are, the less good ideas you have, or that your experience isn't as valuable. Holy shit. And I've seen this a lot, and it's quite interesting. I think, I don't know, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and experience around that. I mean, you're at the senior director level on everything you do at this point, I'm sure, but how does that come into play? How do you feel? There is an ageism in our industry, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that, is what I'm trying to say.
I wish there wasn't. I mean, it's the hard part, and I don't think it's just in our industry. I think in general, the idea that, as somebody who is aging and getting older, you're not as quick, you're not as sharp, you don't know the tools. And, part of that is familiarity. I'm going to steal from comic book writer Peter David. He was talking about, one of the characters, Quicksilver. And the question that was thrown at the character was, you come across as arrogant and impatient, and why is that? And the phrase that David put in his character's mouth was, have you ever stood in line at the ATM and the person in front of you is just not getting it? And you're sitting there and you're waiting for things to just go so you can do your thing. And, the response was, well, yeah, of course. And the character said, I feel like that all the time. And I think as we get older, it gets, everything changes. We talked about that earlier in this conversation. Everything is changing. And if you can't keep up with that, you're going to struggle. And as things change, it's harder to keep up.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your experience may be, what you've been through, the scars you may have, the things that you have learned, the hard lessons that you've picked up on. But if you can't put that in context with today, you're going to struggle. The people around you that have got used to the tools, we were just talking about print a minute ago.
Right.
That's changed. How we market has changed considerably. And, the experience that, we earn over time is significant. It's important. And staying relevant is the challenge that we all face. I hate to say it, but your kids are going to look at you at some point and say, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they should.
I know I did that. I know I did that when my dad was saying, hey, watch out for this. And I know my kids are probably like, you don't know.
Yeah, that's how
right.
that goes.
I don't know, but neither do you.
Well, I think there's an important underpinning here. Human beings and culture and interactions and the fundamentals of storytelling have stayed the same for generations and generations, right? The high level shit is always the same, right? And you have more experience than I do in that, and someone with more experience than that's been at it longer than you has more and more stories and more scars and bumps and screws and scrapes and all that. So those things are important and massively help steer the bigger picture. The tinier things, the tools, I find myself struggling in Photoshop a little bit. I know there's 5 different ways to do this way fucking faster than I'm doing it. There's some 19-year-old kid that's like, why is he doing it all slow like that, right? But that's just how I do it, right? And in my case, I'm doing it for fun on my live stream, but I think, it's really about the collaboration that we need those young, hungry minds that are eager and willing to put in, 70, 80 hours a week and learn all the new tools and be the hip relevant thing now. But we all start there, right? And then we evolve into knowing these are the principles, these are the pitfalls, these are the things we want to definitely do, and that you might not know when you're just I'm gonna go do this and work hard. I don't know. So that's what I tell you.
I agree with you. I want to build on that for a second because, as someone who has experience in a number of areas that are softer, not necessarily, as much on the technical side. For what it's worth, I'm pretty good on the technical side of things. But, being able to understand it, to be able to leverage somebody who has that kind of granular knowledge with a particular tool to say, here's what I'm trying to get to, and here's why. I think getting back to something that you said that we were talking about earlier about, do's and don'ts, creative direction. I don't need you to tell me how to do the thing. I need you to tell me, what hill are we trying to take? We'll figure out how to get there. But if you tell me I've got to walk through the minefield and then the swamp and then, tiptoe past the zombies, that's exciting. It makes for a great game. But, if we just take this side path over here and then go up the slope, we'll get to the same destination without all the scars.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the experience comes into play. As someone who's been in the industry for a while, I've learned a lot along the way. And I know I have a lot to learn. That bit of being able to collaborate with the folks that are younger, hungrier, more technical savvy, whatever it may be, that's where all of us are smarter than any one of us alone.
Yeah.
And I think what we see in the industry, unfortunately, it also comes down to dollars. I think part of it is, folks that are starting out in the industry, they're less expensive, easier on the bottom line. And you can basically say, I'll give you pizza this weekend. You're going to have to, turn it up.
We've both been on both sides of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have. So I really think, in order to solve the world's problems, which is, ultimately what we're not here to talk about, maybe we will, to solve the world's problems, it really is leveraging the experience of people that know things, that have learned the hard lessons, and the energy and the time and the the skills that people who are younger and starting out, pull from those two energies. And I think you can make something that's long lasting, unstoppable, unbeatable. But if you only focus on the young part or you only focus on the old part, you're missing half the equation. I mean, left brain, right brain, that's having a whole brain makes you so much better than having half a brain. And I think that applies here as well.
I love it. Yeah. I just keep thinking of this analogy in my head because I'm a super nerd like yourself, but it's like, being young and hungry and strong is like, I'm going to take this ring to Mount Doom and throw it in, and we're going to make a 3-book trilogy and it's going to be amazing. And being wise and experienced is after you read the 3rd book, like, hey, Gandalf, why didn't you just pick us up on the eagles in the Shire and we just flew over the, there we go. No more Sauron. Like story sort of sucks, but hey, we got the job done and it was way more effective. Resources were like not needed and nobody else had to die. Cool.
So true. I mean, it's, and I'm sure somebody would be like, oh, well, have you met the anti-aircraft, anti-eagle canists that we have?
Like, exactly. So, but yeah, you at least want to reverse engineer the easiest solution instead of just like, hey, we're going to trudge through like, let's start over here because we've done all that. It's hard as shit. Is this a solution?
Well, that's the thing, and I like when it comes to planning out, what are we doing with, the creative or the executions of the campaign and rolling that out. I generally have a plan A, plan B, and plan C, baked in there somewhere. And inevitably, the final plan is a mix of all 3 of those scenarios. It's inevitable.
Inevitably. Yeah. Yeah. Because you can't plan for what you don't know, and you can't know everything until you're in it, right? Like you can have an idea, you can have expectations, but no 2 scenarios are ever exactly the same, and you're going to hit roadblocks. So having contingencies and backups and alternatives, like that's part of the deal, right? Like whenever you're doing any type of leadership, especially in a business setting. So
yeah.
Super good stuff. Let's see. I think I have.
How are we on time?
We got about 5 more minutes. So any other passing bits of wisdom you think people should know when they're in the do's and don'ts of giving creative feedback?
Yeah, I think so. Don't come into it certain that you know everything. And that works for both as the client and as the creative. There are things that you will learn through this process. And if you are so convinced that you have the right way, you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to miss that it's going to sound a little cheesy, but design and creative work is a little bit like magic without it. And part of that magic means this thing that came out of left field that you didn't expect, like, wait, I could take that, incorporate that into my story here. And now not only do I have something that is a tighter, more interesting creative, but no one's done this in this space. But if you're not open to that possibility that the universe can throw that at you, or your subconscious, depending on how you want to play with it,
sure,
then you're going to miss those opportunities. So be humble, be open to it, and be willing to say, wow, that was a mistake. Let's not do that again.
It's like the happy little accidents, watching Bob Ross do some paintings, right? Like, oh, wait, that actually really works for this. And it's this alchemy of ideas. Like, I didn't know that this idea and this idea were going to come together and create this other idea and this other person. And like, none of this would ever happen if we weren't just spitballing and being, and that's like, whenever we do our, we have a blue sky brain jam session. And like, when we do those, like, there's no rules, right? Like, everything, say something funny, say outlandish shit, say whatever. Like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we did this thing that there's no way in hell we're ever going to do, but it sparks an idea over here with this person that like, oh, I didn't think about that, but this reminds me of this thing, and we could do that. And then you start going down these paths when you just let the creativity flow. And there is magic in that.
There is. And I actually, you just sparked an idea for me on one last thing.
Okay.
Don't have a brainstorming session. Give everybody, I've been in the too many meetings like this. We're going to brainstorm on X, and you get 20 minutes worth of briefing and then 10 minutes left for the brainstorm. I'm sorry. My brain doesn't work that way. Give me the briefing. Let me digest it, take a shower, have a coffee, whatever, then show back the next day. Now I'm ready to go to start throwing ideas at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, we're in a brain nap mode now. You just monologued on for 20 minutes. I'm good. Like I am feeling uninspired.
Exactly. So give me the chance. And I've had folks on my team say the same thing, that give me the chance to think it through so that I can show up with ideas. Then we can build.
Okay. I love that. That's fantastic advice. All right. Well, I feel like we've really put some value out, which is always the objective of these podcasts. So we are coming up on time now. So before we wrap, I would like to ask you one last question. That is there anyone or anything in your career that you would like to shout out, maybe to the audience, maybe a mentor, valuable resource, favorite client, something like that?
Yeah. Let me throw a couple out there. First to Rich Watson, the team at Origin Studios. I started working with them back in 2000, and if I had to go to war with some groups, him and his team are the first on the list. Learned a lot. We built a lot. It was amazing. Alan Hunter over at Petrol Advertising, Van Granados, currently at, believe, if I remember right, was at Petrol. And, those two guys taught me a lot about the business of entertainment and how creative teams fit within that. And through their stories, through their mentorship, from them giving input on, hey, this is what we've seen. And I was able to build on that and go.
Love it.
But I also want to throw a shout out to everyone who ever gave me a shot.
Beautiful.
Anybody that ever hired me or tapped me on the shoulder said, hey, I think you can do this. And it's a long list. I feel that my life is a connection of luck, where I've just been lucky to come across the right people at times that gave me these opportunities to really stretch. And, big shout out to them. Thank you for that. That's my biggest.
I love that. And that's such a statement of humility. I see a lot of people who are very insecure in their success, and they pretend like they didn't get lucky, or that opportunities, just because you work hard and you put yourself in the right place at the right time to get lucky, doesn't mean you weren't in the end fucking lucky, right? Like this is like, they somehow feel like that undermines their hard work or something. I see this a lot, and I think I really just appreciate the fact that, like, you acknowledge that, like, yeah, you obviously worked hard and mastered your craft and, like, really gave a shit about everything you did, and people saw that and saw your value, but you may have never been in front of those people and may have never gotten lucky. You could have never had opportunities happen for you, right? Like, in some ways we manifest those things, but, like, just staying humble is so important, and I just appreciate that message. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. One last thing, to my wife. Thank you.
Yes, we are half or less than the people we would be without our partners holding us down and picking us up when we fall on our face. And God knows, like, my wife, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't be half the man I am without my wife. And I definitely wouldn't have made it this far in my career or any of this. Like, so love that. First person to shout out your wife. Love that, Chad. Love it. All right. Well, wanted to, give a big thank you to Katie Shibler, who connected us with Jack. Is that how you say Katie's last name? I'm Shibler. Oh, perfect. All right. I love Katie. Yeah. Katie Saves Marketing. Yeah.
Fantastic group.
Great group. We actually do work with them as well. They're amazing human beings over there. And that's always important to us, like making sure that we line up with good people, right? Like, I don't want to, we've got some superpowers over here. I don't want to just give those out to anybody. We have to have some discernment,
Do your parts for good.
Exactly. All right. Well, we've been talking to Jack, a creative director and design strategist. You can check out his website at jacksiler.net. That's JACKSILER.net. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
Send me an email, jacksiler1@gmail.com.
All right. I love it. The Gmail. I love it.
Keep it simple.
Hey, man, don't fix it if it ain't broken. So,
Ain't that the truth?
all right, Jack, thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll see you all.
Carl, thank you. This has been a privilege and a joy. Thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.